Hello, welcome to Philosophy Roulette 155, where we read and review philosophy live on air. Okay, let's see if there's anything new. I kind of doubt it since there wasn't much this morning, and today is what? Sunday, so probably didn't update too much. Oh, it's still, no. Agriculture and human values, always with the updates, and always more bioethics. But I don't know what this is, but it looks like the language I can't read, so it doesn't matter. Maybe French, I guess. Cognition, that's kind of sciencey, but that's still good. Let's see, complexity again with the sciencey. Consciousness and cognition, maybe I'll take a look at that. Historical materialism, take a look there, why not? Yeah, jump from the semiotics of law, interesting. Legal philosophy, journal of moral philosophy. Journal of semantics is probably too much of linguistics. Linguistics is cool, but ooh, a bunch of stuff came out today. Oh, that's right, because I had read some, what's it called? I read stuff from yesterday this morning, not today. Logic Journal of the ACDF, good journal, but usually very formula-based. It's logic. Metascience. Rabies and the City. Oh. Alright, so let's see if we got some page numbers. Nope, not going to bother if I don't got page numbers. Historical materialism. Editor's introduction, introductions. History and the thought of Zavaleta. Huh, interesting. What is this? Material? So it looks like some sort of Marxist journal, which is kind of cool. But I don't normally do just sort of Marxist history stuff, but I might consider it. I might come back here and see what else we have. Alright, semiotic review. Non-positive concept of constitutional rights. Interesting. What is it? Legal theory, legal argumentation for. How reflective? Okay, so this worries me because of these page numbers seem a little. If they're all short, that usually just means that it's a double column, so everything's twice as big. So let's see. It's a review. Let's see what else we got. Recent developments, emotions, and sentiment in judicial deliberation. Interesting, 10 pages. The traditional perspective on emotion. Let's click on it and see what it says. Seems. I don't want to get too far out of field because then I can't say anything. If I can't say anything, it gets hard. I'm just like reading the paper. That does happen sometimes, but the role of literature. So is this the same thing? No, different author. Oh no, ACDF. Maybe this is it, and Rodriguez. Maybe it's a similar paper. Huh, interesting. Maybe they got a very similar. Let's click on it and see what it looks like. I mean, it's not in the right journal. Society for Law and Literature. Okay, so maybe this was a. I don't know. Can look at it in a minute. It's a Journal of Moral Philosophy. See what we got here. I don't know if I've read anything from Journal Moral. There's a review. Written by, edited by, ethicals, edited by, written by. Moral evaluation of past tragedies, a new puzzle. That sounds like fun. The normativity, rationality, review. Okay, so this looks like the only one that might fit the bill. Oh, that's not what I want to see. And there's no, it's not available. That's sad. I don't like that. And metascience. I don't know what metascience is. Review. why history and philosophy of science matters. It seems like an editorial. It's 4 pages. Well, maybe all this stuff is really short. Maybe it's twice as long. 3 pages. The truth about post-truth. This looks like review. Nope. Alright, so gave it a look-see. Let's see what anything else to look-see at. Review. Oh, here's tons of reviews. Alright. Yeah, this is all reviews. Let's see. Okay, down here. Concluding unscientific image. Funny. Reflections on the history of science in modern university. And these are still reviews above it. What was that one up here, maybe? Why history and philosophy of science matters. I guess like this preaching to the choir, but let's see. Mechanism and let's take a quick gander at these and see if they're available. As always, anyone out there in the watching public is free to make a recommendation. Have I clicked on this before? Look at this. I've clicked on this. It's all blue. It's oh, there's an editorial. That's why I did not read it before. So it means I have looked at this. And what is this? Journal for Moral Philosophy. Participation. Oh, is there anything else in this one? Oh, that's right. Nope. They were all reviews or... Shucks. Alright, so what was this? This is not the right journal, unfortunately. This is the Italian Society for Law and Literature, not the Philosophy Journal. Well, I see Nicomachean. Well, you know what? I saw Nicomachean Ethics really fast. That is philosophy enough for me. So, this looks good, actually. So we're going to do this one because why not? It was written by a philosopher and on the philosophy of law. And I haven't done philosophy of law in a while. We've done a lot of politics and some epistemology of government, but we haven't done any philosophy of law in a bit. So, that is fine. Because it's by the same author, ACDF. So this must have been an earlier version or something to that effect of the similar things. Let's see. So, okie dokie. Let me get the links for y'all. So if you're in chat, you can grab the link. If it's not there, you can type !paper. And let's see. I wonder if the other one is published here. Let's see if I have a better full paper link. Okay. So no, we've got these two, but not the other one in fill papers. Alright, it'll have to do. It'll be a proxy for the other 2 papers. In the Western world, reason and emotion are traditionally assumed to be distinct universes that nothing or very little has to do with each other. This vision of emotions as completely dissociated of reason goes back to classical Greek antiquity, exemplary to Plato. Although Aristotle was Plato's student and a member of the Academy for 20 years, he rethought the relation between emotions and reason in practical life, in other fields as rhetoric, etc. In this paper, we will explore the relation between emotions and reason in ethics according to Aristotle's point of view. Our main point is to rethink the practical realization of law challenges and the role of literary pieces to the development of excellence of phronesis and judicial virtues of the non-rational part of the soul. The used methodology was the descriptive analytical. Okie dokie. Okay, so this does seem... I had to guess. Is this going to have enough philosophy? This looks like it's all philosophy. Maybe some ancient and legal philosophy. Aristotle on emotions in rhetoric. In rhetoric, Aristotle realized that facts are perceived differently under the influence of different emotions. The good speaker knows that the reality itself in practical matters does not exist in a pure objective way. What is true for me is what I perceive as true, and emotions are an important part of my experience of life, my perception of correctness, and to the judgment in a particular case. Aristotle realized that emotions are not auxiliary auxiliary element of persuasion, as the ancient tradition used to assume, but they are important because they affect the judgment of the audience, or, in other words, emotions change the way one perceive and evaluate the facts of life. The emotional arguments are much more complex than we normally see them. According to Aristotle and rhetoric, emotions are the causes that make humans amend and introduce changes in their judgments insofar as they involve pain and pleasure. Plato, in effect, studied the emotions and realized that the emotional responses are different from the body sensations and bodily drives. In Philebus, Socrates distinguishes between three kinds of mixed pleasures and pains. There are mixtures which concern the body and are found in the body, those that belong to the soul itself and are found in the soul, and those that belong to the soul and to the body. Emotions as anger, fear, lament, love, longing, emulation, and envy are understood as mixed pleasures and pains belonging only to the soul. According to Fortinbras, the importance of this classification is to be seen in the union of emotional responses into a single class marked off from other kinds of mixed pleasures and pains that depend upon certain bodily conditions. Socrates is clear when say that anger and fear are fundamentally different from itches and tickles and hunger and thirsts, that emotional responses are neither bodily sensations nor bodily drives, and therefore are to be grouped separately as pleasures and pains of the soul itself. However, Socrates is not clear about the cognitive nature of emotional response. The Philebus certainly makes clear that Plato saw an intimate relation between emotion and cognition, but it fails to make this relation clear. In Philebus, Socrates and Protarchus discuss the relation between emotions and other kinds of pains and pleasures and cognition. Protarchus understands that an opinion can be true or false, but he is not ready to concede that pleasure and pain can be classified as true or false. Facing the provocative theme, Socrates points out similarities between opinion and pleasure and pain. In order to establish that pleasures and pain can be true or false as opinions, he affirms that pleasure often occurs together with false opinion. According to Fortinbras, the use of with reflects a simple concurrence between opinion and pleasure. Opinion accompanies pleasure but is external to pleasure. It's clear that Plato understood that emotions and pleasures are close related, but it is not clear what kind of relation exists between emotion and cognition, stated Fortinbras. Alright, so we've got a bunch of things going on here. So we've got like multiple ancient theories of how emotions, facts, and cognition all interrelate. Alright. In rhetoric, the relation between emotion and cognition is much clearer than Aristotle's answer to this debate presented in Topics. There we can find an explicit relation between the thought of outrage as an efficient cause and the emotion of anger, for example. For Aristotle, the thought of outrage is not merely characteristic of anger, it's necessarily and properly mentioned in the essential definition of anger. The efficient cause of anger is the thought of outrage, which means that someone cannot be angry when she thinks herself as treated justly. If I did something wrong and I know it, I will not feel angry. In that case, I can feel shame, fear, sadness, or other emotion, but never anger. There is a logic distinction between similar emotions. Let's analyze the logic distinction between hate and anger. Anger, as we stated under Aristotle's perspective, is an emotion motivated by the thought of outrage. Someone said or did something outrageous without any reason to me or to someone who I care about. Anger is directed to one individual who I perceive as an outrageous one. Hate is distinct from anger because for its occurrence, it's not necessary to believe in personal outrage, but to think of something as a certain kind of person. The efficient cause became a powerful tool for distinguishing the logical boundaries between related emotions. Both fear and shame involve disturbance, and both can be labeled as phobos, but they are essentially different because fear necessarily involves the thought of impending harm, while shame necessarily involves the thought of disgrace. Notwithstanding the importance of efficient causes to definition and distinction of one emotion from another, Aristotle is not concerned exclusively upon one kind of cause. His scientific purposes move him toward the identification of other causes as the material and final cause. In regard to emotions, this means that he will prefer definitions which mention more than the thought which moves a man to respond emotionally. Anger is not to be defined by the efficient cause alone. Mention must be made of material and final causes, that is to say, of blood boiling around the heart and a desire for returning pain. Aristotle realized that emotions are based on impressions, thoughts, or opinions that can be altered by arguments. The good speaker can't ignore the emotions because they are a crucial lens through which we see the facts of the world. However, the importance of emotions inside Aristotle's thought is not restricted to rhetoric. The study of emotions also reflected in the need of rethinking the role of tragedy and music in the development of a theory of benefits through purgation, as catharsis. And with regards to our main concern in this text, it culminated in a challenging approach to ethics. Okay. Anything to say? Yeah, it's depends how yeah, it depends on what side of the fence you're on. I guess if like you want to keep everything separate, or do the emotions really affect how you see the world, or do you want to be more platonic and say, look, the world is one way, and then the emotions have to be separated out. Depends. I do personally think we really can't separate out sort of the emotional reasoning. I think it's probably from Heidegger. So you're always in a mood at some point, and if you're always in a mood, that means you always have some sort of bias, like mood-based bias towards how you see the world. If you're in a good mood, you see things in sort of rose-colored glasses, and happy red. And if you're angry, you see everything with you see red, and then it's a much more angry red. So yeah. What was it, in high school? A girl had some, like, I forget what color, some like very like bright red sunglasses or something. I put them on. I swear I got angrier just by wearing them. I don't know. It was interesting. The education of the desire through reason and practical deliberation. In Book 6 of the Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle is dedicated to reflect on the fair means between excess and lack in practical deliberation. What does it mean that human action must be oriented by indication of the guiding sense? Aristotle begins his reflection stating that there are two dimensions of the human soul, one that engages in reasoning and one that cannot itself reason but is nonetheless capable of following reason. The first one may be split in two. A contemplative part, which studies the invariable truths of science and mathematics, the scientific faculty. B, one that deals with practical matters of human life, calculative faculty. Ethics is on the dimension of what can be otherwise. It is not governed by well-defined accessible principles, but it is a practical search for the best decision under a specific situation. To make progress in this sphere, we must already have come to enjoy doing what is just, courageous, generous, and the like. We must experience these activities not as burdensome constraints, but as noble, worthwhile, and enjoyable in themselves. We approach ethical theory with a disorganized bundle of likes and dislikes based on habit and experience. The calculative faculty and desire are the basis of the choice, which is the efficient cause of the action. The man constituted by thought and desire is the origin and the efficient cause of the action. Good actions if you have true thought and right desire, and bad actions if you have false thought and wrong desire. Emotions are desires which can be educated by habituation and, above all, through the action guided by deliberation. The goal of the moral education is to educate the desire in order to make it pursue what is good, and the good in practical issues in general is the fair means between excess and lack. The whole problem lies exactly in the relation between the desired and the thinking in the concrete moment of decision. Moral virtue is a disposition on the choice or election, so that thought has to be right and the desire straight, so that the prohairesis is good. There has to be a coincidence between what reason says and the desire pursued, so that the prohairesis is serious. Professor Nuno Colo goes on to say that on the act gives the mobilization of the whole soul. The different dimensions of the soul, the rational and the irrational ones, are mobilized on the act of serious man, even because only then he, while serious, constitutes its own character. Okay, so standard Aristotelian stuff. You have to be habituated and educated to act well. It takes experience and work. Habituation precedes the rational deliberation of the wise man. Yep, okay. We start to do what is right since childhood if we have wise parents, are influenced by wise people, and live in a place ruled by good rules, etc., before the very understanding and the reflection on what is good and bad. First, the alogical half is habituated correctly, and then this habituation is confirmed by the reflections on the logical half. Personally, at the moment, I'm sort of against this sort of thing. I'm not quite sure if that's really how things work, or if the alogical half is what the logical half just gets biased towards. So I'm starting to wonder about this myself, but I mean, this is a fine understanding of Aristotle, at least. Between habituation and practical deliberation, a dialectical relation is established. That is, since childhood we are used to act according to what is right. As we are growing and facing alone the practical situation, the concrete problems of the practical life which demand a solution, we need to evaluate what is the right thing to do in practice. Yeah. The habituation and the previous deliberation will not solve the real problem of doing the right thing in a practical situation. Notwithstanding, the more I act according to the true thought and the right desire, the more habituated I am. The more habituated I am in acting that way. Action on what is but could be otherwise constitutes the dispositions of character of the non-rational part of the soul and the excellence of phronesis. This understanding of the challenges of practical life is very realistic because it is not focused on the avoidance or the rejection of emotions in practice, but on the education of the desire by reason in practice. So we've got this reason in practice, not education of the desire. Not the avoidance or rejection of emotion, but sort of like their training of reason in practice. The excellence of phronesis in practical virtues predisposes the phronimos person to act in one direction and not the other. Quote, affirming that desire is persuaded by reason is different than affirming that desire is chosen by reason. If it could be chosen rationally in a deliberate way, then there would be no need of the habit as a formative practice of the desire. Desire cannot be immediately and directly determined by reason. It must be prepared, cultivated, and used to obey reason. If we could choose what to desire, there would be no need of educating desire, and even less to keep the education of the desire as a regular practice of the virtuous actions. That's the reason why it is not possible to choose the desire in a deliberative way. It would not make sense if it happened this way. The good deliberation in practical life includes emotions, and the wise man, rather than avoiding the emotional experience, should feel emotion in the right way. Yeah, so if you're trained, your emotions already track what's the rational side, and then you can, I guess, justify it later, or maybe refine your acts later, but you're already predisposed towards the rational. You're emotionally predisposed to the rational. So, Aristotle states that the following advice must guide the emotional experience of the wise man in practical situations. Feel emotions at the right times with reference to the right objects, towards the right people, with the right motive, and in the right way is what both intermediate and best, and this is characteristic of virtue. However, not every action nor every passion admits of a relative mean between two extremes. Adultery, theft, murder, envy are examples of actions and passions that are themselves bad. Once they are done, it can't be right. It's not possible to admit a mean intentional murder towards a right person at the same time and in the right way, but simply to do it is to go wrong. Yeah, so but still, even if you do all the training, you can't get that doesn't mean that all your outcomes must be the right just because you were trained right. You can still do the wrong thing even if you were habituated correctly. Alright, so the excellence of phronesis in law. If the chat has any, if the viewership has any questions, please let me know. I will try to answer it, but this is my first time reading it too. The law is not a strictly theoretical science. It is a science that is called to solve problems arising in praxis in the world of life always in motion, which does not follow a logical or natural order or are ruled by fixed principles and norms. The ethical thought in Aristotle is both political and legal, clarifies Colo. If wisdom is not an excellence, a way of thinking specifically legal, it is, however, central to the law as it is mobilized around act in any and all circumstances in the practical sphere where the law is inscribed. The wise man is the one who, in every situation of life, is invested with the task of figuring out what is good, the best thing to do in a concrete problem. On the dimension of what is but could be otherwise, there will always be a decision. The judgment is the core of practical life and also the core of adjudication. What characterizes the judgment is the resolution of a practical controversy by an argumentative weighting rationally guided, which leads, therefore, to a communicatively founded solution. According to Castanheira Neves, law is an incomplete task because between the legal system and the legal case, a dialectical relation is established. What does the human dignity principle mean in concrete cases? We can read about this subject, and this scientific knowledge can help in clarifying the general concept of human dignity, but it will not solve the practical legal problem of finding the best legal answer for the concrete legal case. The judge cannot excuse herself to provide a reasoned response to the cases. However, the legal answer is not previously defined in the legal system, but the result of a dialectical process in which the judge has a crucial role. In judgment, there is decision, even though it is desired to reverse the. In judgment, there is decision, even though it is desired to reverse the dimension of the voluntas into ratio. The methodological dimension of the practical realization of law aim to establish the conditions, the assumptions, and the requirements of this exercise. Notwithstanding, it does not solve the practical realization of law challenges by itself. Yeah, as much as you build into the law, it's not going to be practical. It's always going to be, there's always the de facto de jure. Like, the law says one thing, but de facto, how things are out in the world will always, they can never be exactly identical. How the law views something and how it actually plays out. I mean, if things were as we said they were, we'd just be idealists. But that's not going to work in all cases. Even, I don't know if it ever works, but it might. The dialectical relation between the legal system and the legal case and the role of phronesis. According to Professor Castanheira Neves, as stated above, the realization of law is composed by two dialectically intricate dimensions, the legal system and the legal problem. The meaning of the legal system is not static. Despite of a previous juridical knowledge available on positive norms, precedents, doctrine, etc., the legal problem is always the expression of an obstacle, a perplexity, or doubt raised in the middle of the intentional assumption of the legal system and the real situation. The normativity of the legal system is an open constituents due to the aim to overcome the legal problems in a practical normativity manner, which the result could be the resignation of the legal system, and due to its other constitutive dimension, the axiological normative validity. If we assume the concrete case as the methodological prius of the practical realization of law, and the axiological dimension of law as a validity to assume and to problematize in the very realization of law, then we are able to conclude that the practical realization of law demands the Aristotle's phronesis excellence. Yeah, so you have to really be good at stuff to get things right. In the judgment, there is decision, even though it is desired to reverse the dimension of the voluntas into ratio. However, the judges prepared for the practical realization of law challenges under jurisprudentialism approach and the Aristotle's theory of practical reason. Yeah, are the judges prepared for this? Okay, so how do you actually do said things? We understand that judges would be more realistically prepared to judge if, among other things, a. the decision dimension of the judicial deliberation process were assumed rather than artificially eliminated by judicial methods and judicial procedures. Jurisprudentialism proposes a methodological approach which does not aim to eliminate, because it is impossible, the decision dimension of the judicial deliberative process. B. They were allowed to recognize the presence of emotions in judicial decision process and that the best way of dealing with emotions is educating them in practice. The education of the desire is an important part of the judicial virtuous process, which is developed in practice, acting and responding to a virtuous judge. The development of judicial virtues requires a set of practices that adequately engage dispositions, affections, emotions, and demand for concrete virtuous behavior. Alright, so I guess the argument here is that the legal system is making a very similar distinction that Aristotle made, and from the little I understand of this, I think that's accurate, but I'm talking about like one little snippet I heard from some legal philosopher once, that this is how it is. So the question is, how does emotion then how can emotion be practically integrated into the judge's work if you can't eliminate the emotions from the sort of deliberative process? And so this is the question. The only way of being a virtuous person is acting as a virtuous one, states Aristotle. When we read literary pieces, especially the realistic ones, we are called to reflect about other forms of thought and different ways of dealing with practical challenges of life. Reading and imagining through a literary piece, we can learn from the bad and good actions of the characters and their impacts in the other characters' lives. We can reflect about our own previous actions and decisions. We can also decide to change the way we were used to dealing with a kind of situation, because we are now able to see some unnoticed impacts that are, etc. Impacts of that, etc. The imaginative experience of reading literary works can change the way we act in practical life, and can also be an opportunity to experience tragic choices and tragic dilemmas. Law, as we have seen before, is an open human task. It's constituted by a dialectical relation between the legal system and the legal case, and it has a decision dimension that can't be converted into ratio. So ratio, I guess, is the Italian ratio, not just a comparison, but it's a rational comparison, so it can't be a rational thing. Just a rational analysis. There are not available correct legal answers in the legal system to be applied on the legal case. Every practical realization of the law implies the judge herself in different degrees. Yeah, so the judge is implied into everything. So that means the emotions are implied into everything. The judge must be committed to educate her desires and emotions and to be aware of the challenges of the practical realization of law. In order to accomplish the first task, literature can be very helpful due to literary works can present examples of virtue acts and virtuous persons whose examples can be followed by us. For the second task, literature can illustrate the challenges of the practical decisions in Western constitutional democracies in which a variety of heterogeneous basic liberties and social goods enjoy legal protection. The judicial decisions as a special kind of practical decision can't overcome the tragic dimension of the practical realization of law in a pluralistic constitutional democracy experience. The acknowledgement that the losing claim has not been sufficiently honored by the legal choice, and that this very fact is morally disturbing. Wait, what? The literary experience as a vivid and imaginative human experience can contribute to the recognition of the tragic choices in law. Alright, so I guess this is saying that because you can't make this just sort of an analytic decision procedure, you just can't feed this into a computer and spit out the sentence, that you're going to inherently have tragedy here. And if you're going to inherently have tragedy, then you do need literature to understand tragedy better, to understand the consequences of tragic decisions in some sense. Okay, this is sort of I'd like to hear more about exactly how literature does that, but I mean, it's a reasonable argument in the sense that where else are you going to find tragedy? You're just not going to. I recall reading an argument, I mean, just the nature of the United States, the judicial system, and everything is getting pumped through, and too few judges, too many cases, all that sort of stuff. And it's like basically, there was a constitutional law scholar, an academic, got a ticket he was out of the country at the time doing something, I forget, vacation or a conference or one thing or another, and he had lent his car to a friend, and his friend had gotten a ticket via some sort of automated system, like maybe like an automated red light camera, an automated speed trap, I don't know. So he went and fought it because he said, well, I can't pay for this ticket, I didn't do it, I was out of the country, I can prove it. And he said the judge looked so bored the whole time. And the judge was just a rubber stamp all the proceedings because there was nothing going to happen. It's either they just rule for the red light camera every time. But the legal scholar knew the one thing that they basically was unconstitutional for them to say. And so he asked the question, and the people on the stand, it was like the cop who was like officially rubber stamping all the tickets, he answered in the affirmative to the basically completely unconstitutional statement. And so they said the judge looked up for that 1 second at him and then went back to like filling out his paperwork. It's like that was the tragedy of the whole thing. They just got the judge for that 1 second because the judge knew how wrong everything was that was going on according to the state constitution, but basically it only merited basically a half second of the judge's time. The judge dismissed the case or did something or whatever it was, but I wonder what ever happened. This was not that long ago, and they said they were going to continue to pursue it because they didn't want to even have it on the books. The guy said the law is unconstitutional, and just dismissing the case or just whatever it was, getting the fine voided, didn't fix the law. Anyhow, but like, I just remember the thing was the judge looked up for a second and then went back to filling out his paperwork. There's your tragedy. Just illegal things are basically merit a glance. Final notes. The realization of the law is a practical task. If we assume the Castahari-Neves jurisprudentialism, we will be urged to look to the law as a task that is performed in practice. Ending a legal problem means much more than offering a legal answer for the legal case. It demands judges and legal professionals in general who are really committed to the practical deliberation under the legal case questioning, which involves emotions. The core of the realization of law is the legal case, assumed as a methodological prius. And the adequate answer for it is not available in the legal system, but it is a human task. By exercising this task, which encloses at its core judgment and choice, the judge can develop and improve the excellence of phronesis, which is fundamental for the law as a practical normative issue. The only way of being a virtuous person is acting as a virtuous one. When we read literary pieces, we are called to reflect about other forms of thought and different ways of dealing with practical challenges of life. Reading a literary piece, we can learn from the bad and good actions of the characters and their impacts on the other characters' lives. We can reflect about our own previous actions and decisions. We can also decide to change the way we're used to dealing with a kind of situation because we are now able to see some unnoticed impacts of that. The imaginative experience of reading literary works can change the way we act in practical life. Law is not a strictly theoretical science, but a practical science of establishing the adequate legal decisions for a concrete legal case in a specific situation. The judge, more than being a cultivated person, she must be a virtuous one, committed to the practical realization of law task. Literary works can present examples of virtuous acts and virtuous persons whose examples can be followed by us. Literature illustrates the challenges of the practical decisions in the Western constitutional democracies, in which a variety of heterogeneous basic liberties and social goods enjoy legal protection. It can prepare us as moral agents for the practical realization of law challenges in a plural and heterogeneous world. Okie dokie. This is a nice article. My current concerns is in the United States we have many problems, and one of them is that the different factions always accuse the judges in the country of being activists on one side or the other, and basically what they're saying is, yes, your reasoning logically, but because you are biased in certain ways, you are distorting what the law should be on, of course, their own understanding of what the law should be. So that's the question. Even if you do read lots of literature and you are trained in a certain way, what is this training and why is that the training that is the best for the future? Even if you are trained in like some sort of reasonably good way, how will we know that that is the best sort of historical practical training, the best habituation for the problems of the future? I don't know. I mean, we do the best we can, but it seems that you can be trained in multiple good ways. There's multiple ways to be good, but that doesn't mean you're going to be good at the problems of now. And there's always a problem. You have to like sort of predict the future in order to be habituated to the future problems. But if you have these sorts of ideological problems like we have in the United States, you may be training these judges in certain ways, but that may just bite in the butt. It can backfire. So it's a lot of hard problems in these sort of practical decisions. Yeah, so I'm worried about like what literature are you reading? Like there is some great literature out there, but some of it's just basically it may be habituating people into the wrong sort of way of thinking about stuff. Let's see. Alright, that's about it for now. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. I will be back Tuesday because I usually take Mondays off. So everyone have a good and please be safe out there, especially in the United States. Someone was just messing with me today. I was just like, oh my god, don't mess with me, not today. It's like, why are you messing with me? It's like, oh, I don't need that. And I mean, like, she's laughing, I end up laughing. It's like, okay, it's a little bit of fun, but it's just like, I'd rather just take a nap. I hope she had a good day. Okay. What was this quote? Let's see. Occasion by occasion, one knows what to do if one does, not by applying universal principles, but by being a certain kind of person, one who sees situations in a certain distinctive way. Nice sentiment. Alright, have a good day, everybody. Stay safe out there. I'll be back in a few days. Bye-bye.